that you could give us a vibe right now? I know you can. Y'all, can you give a round of applause to Brad Williams? This is my incredible friend. It's a pleasure to always travel with Brad and do things with Brad. We call him Bad Brad Williams. We're in a band together, which I'll tell you all about. But let's see what he can do over here with this beat. Yeah. Get those drums warmed up. Yeah. Very nice. Can someone grab Priscilla? Just somebody. Oh, never mind. I can ask Tiburcio when he gets in to turn the music down. We're ready. Yeah? Perfect. Yes. This one right here probably has to be my favorite instrument. I love this one so much. Does anybody know what this is called? Clave. Can we ever say clave? This one. Campana. Can everybody say campana? Can we give Brad Williams a round of applause? Oh my goodness, I'm so happy. I love the fact that the sun finally came out today, because it was really cloudy today, and the sol finally came out, so I'm so grateful. Buenas noches, good evening. Mi nombre es Jessica Ayala. I'm very, very, very happy to be here to share space, rhyme, percussion and poetry with you. At any given moment, you're please welcome to follow me on Instagram. That's my Instagram handle. It's pretty easy. I am Jessica Ayala. I love to post posts about poetry, about my experience as an Indigenous woman, my experience as a two-spirit person. I love to share posts sometimes of Brad and I when we're in our band. We have a full band, and I'll share that experience with you. How many of you are writers yourselves or love to write poetry? Fantastic, yes! I love it, I love it, I love it. How many of you have delved into possibly songwriting and poetry, or maybe, you know, you play an instrument, or you're in a band? Ay, que rico, my tribe. I always like to ask those questions because we're so special to the world. Writers are extremely special to the world. We have a gift of being able not only to share in storytelling, but to share stories, which is what tonight is all about. Tonight is a night where we're sharing stories, immigrant stories, stories about immigration, you know, how people migrate, how people move across the globe, right? But we're also sharing stories about Indigenous identity and what that looks like for me and how that shows up for me. And we're also going to celebrate the African drum tonight and percussion, African percussion, and how African percussion delves into, in particularly my culture and in my country. I'm from Colombia, South America. Soy del sur. I am from the south part of Colombia, which is really predominantly where a lot of the indigenous populations live. So I'm very, very proud. That's where my mahogany color comes from, honeys, is from the southern part of Colombia. My father actually was raised in Ecuador, and my mother was raised in Colombia, so I have a little bit of both. I have Ecuadorian and Colombian blood in me, and so that makes for a fantastic Incan and Mayan Empire-ish vibe of a legacy, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So this is wonderful. I am going to actually start. With a poem that I wrote about Colombia when I traveled back home as an adult. I have the blessing of being able have been able to travel back to Colombia, back to my hometown when I was a little girl. My father, when we immigrated to the United States, I was a very young child. But then mi papa, he worked tremendously hard so that he could pay for us to all go home, to fly home. It's not like we could just take a car and travel about 9 hours, you know, to Mexico, like most folks, you know, sometimes are able to do. We actually had to get on a plane, and this was back in the day when there were no airports in Texas that were flying to Colombia. This was like Miami. This was like the real deal in Miami. It was like the 80s and the early 90s where we had to bring like huge maletas, luggage, and, you know, haul all of my baby sisters, because I was the oldest at the time, so we had to haul baby sisters' diaper bags. It was a mess. But, you know, when we got there, it was just incredible for me to be able to see round faces, mahogany faces, high cheekbones, you know, women who looked like me, who had hips like me, who just looked like me, and I thought, oh my gosh, these people look like me. Well, of course they do. They're my gente, my people. So I was, when I became an adult, I traveled home all by myself and I wrote this poem. Now, just to explain to you, I really always tell people that the small town, the small tribe that I'm from is called Ipiales. And Ipiales is known as La Ciudad de Nubes Verdes, the city of green clouds. And the reason they call it that is because our small town literally is like Wizard of Oz. It is this town that is centered literally by all of these mountains, these beautiful green mountains. And so like you literally have to drive up and down these mountains, just to get to Ipiales, just to get to where I'm from. So I wrote this on a trip down. It usually takes 2 hours to get home doing this in a mountain. And so I thought, oh my gosh, what better way than to just pull out my journal and to write this because I haven't been home in 8 years, and I don't know what my relatives look like. I don't know what my tios, my tias, my primos look like. But I did feel the welcoming joy of just being home, being back in my natal, being back with my ancestors, being back. So this is called Ciudad de Nubes Verdes. They call you La Ciudad de Nubes Verdes, but I call you home. Ciudad de Nubes Verdes, my eyes dance with memories of 6 years ago when you held me last. You have not forgotten me. Your gentle arms embrace me singing songs of flutes, drums, and guitars, an ancestral song of joy to welcome the return of their little girl home. La tierra donde my grandfather's bare hands picked papas, choclo y lechuga, the same natal my father dreams when he sleeps, and when he wakes, he speaks. You are the fruit that bears my tia Luz's smile. Hidden in the deepest part of your mountain's divide sings la voz de Nuestra Señora de las Lajas. Carnavales de blanco y negro, the smell of fresh fruit, coffee brewing, empanadas, and hot-pressed pan de maíz in the front windows of La Calle Sexta. Church bells ringing from San Felipe to the left and horses click-clacking along the road to the right. My eyes tell a story of indigenous prayers answered. I was not supposed to make it out of here. This small frame, round-eyed, cinnamon-covered face carries the spirit of my people. My dialect is not the same, but this heart speaks 10,000 languages of moons, mountains, and rivers. You see, I, and home. En el verde se esconde las manos de mi abuelita sembrando papa, choclo y lechuga. En el verde se escucha el canto de mi abuelita con su guitarra. El mismo color verde con el que mi papá sueña cuando duerme. Eres la fruta que siembra la sonrisa de mi tía Luz. Eres el olor de café y pan de maíz que camina en la calle Sexta, acompañada por las campanas del santuario de Nuestra Señora de las Lajas. Eres el mismo verde en el que por primera vez escuché la voz de Papá Dios el día de mi primera comunión. Eres el güiro que se escucha en los carnavales de blanco y negro. En el verde me cantas una canción de alegría anunciando el regreso de su niña querida, con flutas, tambores y guitarras. Esos ojos grandes y cachetes de canela llevan el espíritu de mi gente. Mi dialecto no es el mismo, pero mi corazón palpita, habla 10,000 lenguas de español colombiano. Yo soy la niña de mi gente. Yo soy la niña de la tierra que se llama Ciudad de Nubes Verdes. It's crazy. You'll hear the word decolonize as I further move on with what I'm doing. When I chose to write this collection of poetry, I had no idea that one, it was going to turn into songwriting, and then two, it was totally going to be performed with a band, a whole band. But also, I didn't realize that when I did it, that 4 years later, I was going to even move further into my decolonized journey and my decolonized story. When I chose the cover and the image to my book, I told myself I want to appear on my cover as authentically how I see myself and what I possibly could have looked like before colonization. Like, what do we look like? The question always is, what do we look like before colonization? And I feel like this would be a beautiful picture of me before colonization, and it's just great to see the evolution and how I've moved forward. So I am currently publishing the second edition to HUELGA, and it's going to be a different cover, more, 4 years from now, what my whole decolonization journey has looked like. And it's been wonderful to be able to show up brown and beautiful and indigenous and all those vibes. So I'm gonna share a little bit about that and continue to read from here as well. So let's just get started. Brad, what do you feel? Are you feeling it? Let's do this. Song was out for 6 seconds. Song was out for 6 seconds. Wow. Song was out for 6 seconds. Song was out for 6 seconds. Wow. So you're going to participate, okay? There's going to be a participation because there's no sitting around getting entertained. We're going to entertain each other. So we're going to say, wow, together. Are you ready? Okay, I know you are. Song was out for 6 seconds. Song was out for 6 seconds. Wow. Song was out for 6 seconds. Song was out for 6 seconds. Wow. Woo! Song was out for 6 seconds. You got it. Song was out for 6 seconds. Wow. Song was out for 6 seconds. The hand gestures. Song was out for 6 seconds. Wow. Una carta para el pueblo indígena de las Américas. Aquí no ha pasado nada. Aquí no ha pasado nada. Todavía somos los hijos de Leica. Todavía somos los hijos de Q. Todavía somos los hijos de Leica. Todavía somos los hijos de Q. Aquí no ha pasado nada. Aquí no ha pasado nada. Ya basta con el miedo, ya basta con las deportaciones, ya basta con el miedo. Todavía somos los hijos de Leica, todavía somos los hijos de Q, todavía somos los hijos de Leica, todavía somos los hijos de Q, todavía somos los hijos de Leica, todavía somos los hijos de Q. Aquí no ha pasado nada, aquí no ha pasado nada. Out for 6 seconds. Ready? Song was out for 6 seconds. Woo! Song was out for 6 seconds. Song was out for 6 seconds. Song was out for 6 seconds. Song was out for 6 seconds.
Oh my.
Song was out for 6 seconds. Song was out for 6 seconds. Wow. So we have this 16-year-old girl on a journey. This 16-year-old girl, she says to her mother as she's leaving on a journey, she says, "Mother, please don't cry for me. I'm going on a journey." She says, "Mama, no llores." She says, "Mama, no llores. No llores, no llores, no llores, no llores. Mama, no llores. Mama, no llores. No llores, no llores, no llores, no llores." She continues to tell her mother, she says, "Hey, I'm going to the land that they call America. Me voy al lugar que se llama América. I'm going to the land that they call América. Me voy al lugar que se llama América." You see, we live in a time when one woman gets killed every 16 hours in Honduras. Now I want you to participate with me. You heard me say that 3 times. Honduras. We're going to lift the people of Honduras up tonight. We're going to lift their ancestors tonight. We're going to lift my people, my indigenous people who traveled on caravan tonight. So when I say Honduras, you're going to say Honduras. Oh man, I knew I was with the right people tonight, y'all. The ancestors are already present. I can already feel them. Here we go. You ready? Okay. Yeah, I can feel them. This is good. Let's do this. Honduras. And 80% of those crimes, they go unpunished in the land of Honduras. Honduras. Just like 80% of America's cocaine, it passes through the land of Honduras. Honduras. Ready? And 50 to 60 people, they die a day. They die a day in Honduras. Honduras. You ready? So the 16-year-old girl, she's going to continue on a journey, and she says to her mother, as she cries, she says, "Please don't cry for me, Mama." This is what she continues to say as she's seeking a journey. Mama, no llores. Mama, no llores. No llores, no llores, no llores, no llores. She says, "Mama, no llores. Mama, no llores. No llores, no llores, no llores, no llores. I'm going to the land that they call..." What are they called? Ooh! Me voy al lugar que se llama... What is it called? America. I'm going to the land that they call America. Me voy al lugar que se llama America. We won't talk about the uncomfortable, the deported, and where they go when they disappear from places where they were invisible. We won't talk about the little girls crying in the front yards of America, because who will be the role of their fathers now? At the dinner table, we won't discuss the Chewies who have died inside of Eloy's detention centers, or the thousands of children traveling in busloads from Guatemala to America. The hands and backs that ache keep our hands and backs from aching. No, we won't talk about those working 3 jobs with 3 kids and one on the way for less than minimum wage because they can. We won't talk about La Bestia or the mothers who feed it on a daily, or how detention centers are just modern-day reservations. Let me just say that one more time. Or how detention centers are just modern-day reservations. No. We won't talk about the uncomfortable. We won't talk about the deported. We won't talk about the invisible. We won't. Are you ready for the wow again? Let's do that one. Oh man. Wow. Hey. Song was out for 6 seconds. Song was out for 6 seconds. That's right. Song was out for 6 seconds. 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 In another life, I really do pretend like I know how to play drums, and I'm like, you really do like laughing at me.
But she gets down though. Don't let her play. Don't let her
I really do. It's the truth. He right. When the caravans happened a few years, this was obviously before the pandemic, and I started seeing children getting separated from their parents, like babies, and then babies having to like actually go to court for themselves, with themselves, like 3-year-olds, like month-year-olds who couldn't talk, who barely talk. I high-key had to go quiet and silent, and I couldn't write. I had writer's block for a very long time, and I was just really grieving, and I was angry. And I was like, what do I do? How do I help? What do I do? Like, I feel like my job or my responsibility is always to reflect the times that we live in, but I can't get anything out. And so we were messing around in the band, and it just came to me. I was like, Brad, I said, maybe we can do something, with this beat. And it's the beat that he's about to play now. We're going to do it to another poem. And it really changed everything for me. I mean, after that, I was like, Mama no llores, Mama no llores. And it really was my response to what was happening with the separations and deportations. And it is my love letter to Honduras and low-key everything that's happening in Honduras. So thank you for sharing space with me on that one. You ready? Let's do this. I want to go back, 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 back. I want to go back, 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 back. I want to go back. I want to go back. I want to go back, back to the day when my hair was black and the blonde fades much like my colonized name, Ayala, Ayala. I want to go back to when drumming wasn't just para el 12 de diciembre, sino todos los días, like the tribes of the Lakota. The Lakota. Back, back, back. I want to go back before 1492, before we became the new race, the new name, the new face of los conquistadores. The new race, the new face, the new name. When our Chibcha civilization stretched across Central America, when Nevada, California, Arizona, Utah, Texas, Colorado, and Wyoming were still holy lands of the Nictlantanclan. Back, back. I want to go back. Back to when we were kings, now decorated in slave tattoos and gangs, screaming to be free once refugees from El Salvador. I want to go back to when your hair was long, before they cut it. I want to go back to when braiding your hair was a part of my daily prayer as your wife. Before we belonged to La Hacienda Ayala, punished by our Spanish grandfathers for speaking Spanish, punished by our English colonizers for speaking Spanish, punished for speaking. I want to go back, 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 back. When we were medicine women, poets and priests, when our rivers were healing waters, clean enough to drink. Back. When the hue of your ojos negros were beautiful, just like the word indio. Can everybody say that? Indio. Indio. I want to go back, 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 back. So I just tell my people and I tell everybody else, how about you just let us be? Let us be. Let us be. Let us be brown, let us be red, let us be native, let us be. Let us speak Spanish, let us eat tacos, let us wear feathers, let us be. Let us be, 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 let us be. Let us dance powwows, let us dance danza, let us keep drumming. Let us be, let us be. Let us be buffalo, let us be llama, let us be water, let us be. Let us be Zapotec, let us be Olmec, let us be Mayan, let us be. Let us keep weaving, let us keep braiding, let us keep praying, let us be, 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 be. Let me say that one more time. Let us keep weaving, let us keep braiding, let us keep praying, let us be, 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 be. So, if you're curious, I was a blonde a very long time ago. It was definitely one of those moves when you just want to color your hair. And I was a blonde for a minute, and then I was like, oh man, like just pull this out. You know, it's just one of those crises. I don't know, I think I broke up with someone and just needed a new vibe, but that was not the vibe. But that's what happens sometimes, you know, we get into our places. And, you know, when I finally did let the blonde fade out and my natural color come back, I don't know, there was just something so powerful. And being able to just look at myself and say, you know what, you are beautiful just the way that you are. There is absolutely nothing that you need to change about who you are. And, you know, stand in that mahogany and in that black hair and continue to decolonize and continue to shine and vibe and glow. This next poem that I want to share with you is during a time. Okay, so I was sharing this earlier today, but for the students who are here, this probably would have been such an incredible notion when I was your age to understand. And I get it now, and I'm so grateful that I did finally get an opportunity for someone to say to me, you know, Jessica, you can be a multitude of things in your lifetime. Because I had so many issues in college trying to figure out what direction I wanted to head, what I wanted to do, because I was like, I can do this, but I have to pick one thing. And it's not true. You don't have to pick one thing. You could be a teacher for 5 years, then you can totally go into politics if you want to for 5 years. You decide you won't want to do that anymore, and then go and become, I don't know, a computer scientist or an astronaut and then a rock star. It's possible. You could do it all. You really can. And so that was my journey. I was not an astronaut, but I am a rock star now. But at one point I still am an activist. I do consider myself an activist. I was able to organize a marcha in my city. I think the largest one that I was able to organize was about 6,000 people. We met at the church that I was working at the time, and then we literally shut the city. I would like to cuss, but I'm not going to. We shut the city down, and police officers were like, we don't have any control of this anymore. Like, people literally took over the streets, this was around the time that there were a lot of anti-immigrant bills that were happening in Missouri, and we just shut it down. We were not going to take it. We really went to the streets and we fought for our rights, and this poem came out of that time. I felt so proud. We had gone to Jefferson City, we had fought, we won. I got off the bus, there were tons of tíos and tías, and it was beautiful. I mean, we had a whole community of people who didn't speak English, but they said, a mí no me importa, Jessica, tú me llevas donde sea, y yo les miro a esos congresistas en sus caras, y les voy a preguntar, pero ¿por qué yo no he hecho nada? You know, they basically said, I don't care if I don't speak the language. I want to look at these senators and these House of Representatives in their face and ask why. Like, why are they doing what they're doing? And it changed the trajectory of the state of Missouri because folks showed up in numbers. And it was so cute because they had their tamales and their burritos, and everybody packed. I mean, we just had a feast. Like, Congress people did not know. We were walking these marble halls, and Congress people were like, what in God's name is happening? Where are all these people coming from? But when we finally got home and we won, I think I stayed up till 3 in the morning, and I wrote this poem, and it became a song. And so now we perform it live, and it's always so powerful when I perform it live with the whole band. So this is called HUELGA, which is the vibe of the poster and where I'm at. So when I put this together, I told Brad, I said, Brad, I really want a community beat. I want to hear the heartbeat of the community. I want to hear a tribal beat. And he did that. And then after he had the tribal beat, I said, oh my God, we're about to just be ignorant with this. So this is what it is. either use your laps and go like this, or if you want to be a little bit bolder, you can. Because that's how you organize. You got to be one sound, one heartbeat. Organize. It means to decolonize. Huelga means to strike. It means to riot and march. Huelga means to huelga, because it's time to huelga. Huelga's for all of my brown people who rise before the sun meets. Huelga's for every single bracero in the fields of our country. El sudor de tu frente blesses the rich and the hungry. Can you feel that right there? Okay. So we're going to just take it a little bit faster, just a teeny bit faster. Huelga's for all of my brown people who rise before the sun meets, whose brown hands and small frames give us our daily foods to eat. Huelga's for every bracero in the fields of our country. El sudor de tu frente blesses the rich and the hungry. Huelga por Dolores Huerta, nuestra reina de la lucha. With 3 biblical words, she transformed every aspect de la lucha. De la lucha, de la lucha, de la lucha, de la lucha. Huelga to accents who take your Happy Meal orders, who cut green grass along those state line borders. Housekeepers who keep more than just houses. To the quiet ones behind you picking up after the basses. Huelgas por los niños refugios de Honduras un día. Huelga por los niños refugios de Honduras un día. Huelga por César Chávez, por Elvira Arellanos, por los 43 hermanos. them that it means to resist, to protect our grandmother tree of dignity and its branches of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Huelga for fake borders, fake papers, fake names. Huelga por las separaciones, las deportaciones, los soñadores de las nuevas civilizaciones. Huelga for those whose shoulders we rest on, like Pancho Villa, Juan Felipe Herrera, Celina Quintanilla. Montezuma Esparza, Reyes López Tijerina, Miriam Miranda, Gloria Anzula, Mercedes Sosa, Jaime Escalante, Tito Puentes, Silvia Menéndez, Natalia López López, Sofía Cruz, Rudy Corky González, Frida Caldo, Joe Arroyo, Sandra Cisnero, Consuelo Kate Bush, Berta Caceres, Ángel Jacinto Noctum. Huelga because we're beautiful, because our gold, it don't crack. We were the children of Tepeyac, hechos de oro, los que traen esperanza. Esa es mi indígena raza. Huelga. I have to say, Brad, that oh my God, that song kills me every time we perform it, because I'm like, I need somebody else to be on the mic because I just lost my whole voice. But it'd just be so hype. I mean, we literally have like a 7-piece band, and it's beautiful. It's a mixture of African futurism and indigenous futurism, and we do a lot of black and brown collaborations between cumbia beats and Afro beats, and I mean, come on, black people are magic, period. So, you know, it's everything, funk, rock, jazz. Black people are magic in so many wonderful ways. So it's beautiful to be able to like combine all of this radical music and these radical messages. And so you can about imagine, like everybody goes crazy, you know, and then we have the guitar, we have our little guitar. Les does his little doo-doo-doo-doo. So it's a wonderful piece. But I'm so glad that we were able to kind of do like a mini version. Kind of like a snack Snickers, those little mini Snickers, that's what y'all got. Yeah, you can get the whole bar. You got a little snack. But it's powerful, nevertheless. So we talked about wearing many hats. I was an activist, and then after I got burned out becoming an activist, being an activist, because anybody who's ever organized a march or a political rally or been involved knows the tremendous work that it takes. And then not only that, but there's so many people that depend on you for support, and it's a lot. When you know you don't really necessarily know where you're headed, you're just angry and you want to act, and you're good at those things. I decided that I was going to go hide in a kindergarten classroom, and so that's what I did. I became an ESL teacher, and I taught ESL for several years, and it was amazing. And I wrote a poem about ESL. I was also an ESL student, but the difference between me and other students is that I did not have an ESL teacher. When I entered the education system, there were no ESL teachers. I lived my whole life being the only brown kid in school. Like there was black kids, white kids, and then me. And that was it. And so what's funny is in middle school, everybody finally was just like, oh, she's just mixed. She's mixed. She's with us. She's mixed. I'm like, I guess I am mixed. Like, I'm mixed. So that's kind of how that journey went until I really discovered, you know, you get to a place where you're like, oh, shoot, I'm Colombian. I'm Colombian. What y'all talking about? So here is English as a second language. Apple. Boy. Cat. English as a second language, my tongue twists from right to left as I imitate this foreign dialect. English as a second language, English as my second slave tongue, my first. Spanish. Conquest. Colonize. Criminalize. When two vowels go a-walking, the first one does the talking. I tell Jose as he cries to me, I cannot read. My poor baby is losing his identity. He cannot read in English. He cannot speak in Spanish. You see, Jose, he stands 3 feet tall with his head hung low. Every teacher who has taught him, has quit him, has said no. just like our gobernador, just like our neighborhood. Hola, Jose. Mi nombre es Jessica, and we are going to start our first session with a simple lesson called oppression. Rabbit. Raid. Racism. English as a second language, my tongue twists from right to left as I imitate this foreign dialect. I am an immigrant. Ni soy de aquí, ni soy de allá. I was born in la tierra de Colombia. Is it worth it to stay here? To leave the brown skin that loves me, to leave behind all of my families? We are chasing the American dream because our children are going hungry. I would rather go hungry in Mexico and El Salvador. I would rather go hungry than to be eaten alive by Missouri's gobernador. Immigrant. Invisible. Illegal. It is illegal to colonize me. It is illegal to criminalize me. It is illegal to enslave me and move me to my new reservation called deportation. English as a second language, my tongue twists from right to left as I imitate this foreign dialect. English as a second language. I love that one so much. I've been doing a lot of protest. This is all I do is protest poetry, protest music. But I'm gonna be a little loving and a little grateful to the Spirit. I wrote this about all the things that I give thanks for. You know, I think the key to happiness and the key to peace is just gratitude. You gotta be thankful for life. You gotta be thankful for the sun. You know, even you know, sometimes the vibes that are not necessarily your vibes, and it's like, man, what did I do today? But it's still gratitude. You know, you learn so much from that. So I wrote this in gratitude. It's called Gracias a la Vida. I give thanks for the sun rises, the smell of my father's Colombian coffee brewing, and the spoon stains that he leaves behind him. I give thanks for my mother's hands covered in beads of prayers and arroz con pollo. She is the queen painted in holy oils de oro. To the women who stand beside me, mis compañeras, mis hermanas, las manos which made your bottles gave strength to these shoulders so you could become our next Orgullo Hispano. I give thanks for the sound of jazz resonating in my ear until 5 in the morning. To the pouring of writing from my pen flowing, I can feel myself growing and glowing. To clave on Sundays, for meal times on Sundays, to someday returning back to Ipiales. I give thanks for the sun and sunsets. Can everybody say, wow? Thank you. Does anybody have the time? Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. It's just funny. Okay. So, how many of you know of the artist Joe Arroyo? Yeah, Joe Arroyo. Joe Arroyo is a salsa percussionist. He is a salsa clave. He is a salsa singer, a salsa dancer. He is an incredible artist. He is my hero. I really look up to him. He passed, God rest his soul. But I wrote this poem for him. It was my first experience going back home. And this is how I fell in love with salsa, but also how I understood as I got older the real significance of salsa in our community and in our Colombian community, and how the African drum plays such a huge part in that. So let's get that African vibe in here with Joe Arroyo and our that's my negra right there. That's my conga drum. Can everybody say hi to Negra right there? Say hey Negra. I love her. get closer to the to when my father says, "I'm going to teach you how to dance," then we can kind of do just a teeny bit of that accent. Let's just use the drum. Let's just use the conga. Yeah. In the summer of 1989, on my second trip back to Colombia, this was the second time, I learned how to dance salsa for the first time. It's true. Venga, mija, le enseño a bailar, my father would say to me. Come, mija, let me teach you how to dance. My white patent leather shoes moved across the room as if I had known how to dance my entire life. I couldn't resist the sound of los tambores, las trompetas y la clave. The more I moved, the more scuffs my shoes became, but you know what? I didn't care. As long as I got to see my father smile for the rest of the night, that's what made me happy. You see, because in America, my father's smile, it was tired, wrapped in no life, and stressed. I was overjoyed seeing mi papá feliz in his país dancing una salsa with my mother. And so what I did was I closed my eyes and I froze time. The same sounds found their way back to my living room in the United States, and each Saturday, after my father finished working in his wood shop, he would take a shower, lay out a fresh, clean white shirt, then sit with his whiskey to listen to vinyls as the sun would go down. In the same living room, I began to recognize the voice of the man who sang with los tambores, las trompetas, y la clave. On the front cover of my father's album read in big letters, Joe Arroyo. Joe Arroyo. Joe filled my house with clave the nights my parents would have parties. While the rest of the children played outside, I found myself watching my mother dance in her 6-inch heels, red ruby lipstick. Honey, she was bad. She would tell me stories about the parties my father took her to when they were novios, boyfriend and girlfriend. And when Joe was part of a larger salsa group called Fruco y sus Tesos. Alongside Wilson Manjoma, Joe invented a unique sound which combined cumbia, porro, soca, y souk. Each trip back to my country was filled with más Joe, más Fruco, más Nietzsche, más Guayacán, más salsa. And La Niña de 1989 transformed into a young lady with red ruby lipstick and 4-inch heels and a mean salsa swing. I was 16 the night I translated one of Joe's songs in the middle of my living room full of guests and dancing. Joe would sing, No le pegue a la negra, no le pegue a la negra, and I would translate, don't beat the black woman. Don't beat the black woman. With each word sung, the people would dance. Con cada palabra la gente bailaba. With each note played, the trumpet would plea. Con cada grito, las trompetas suplicaban. No le pegue a la negra, no le pegue a la negra, no le pegue a la negra. And in the middle of my living room, I understood the true significance of salsa colombiana. En la misma música se escuchaba el corazón de Joe. Llegué a entender que mi gente también sufrió una esclavitud perpetua. I understood my country also suffered a perpetual slavery. In the 1600s, as the sun of Cartagena would fall, as the sun of Barranquilla would fall, as the sun of Santa Marta would fall, the spirit of the African drum rose to give the resistance to the Afro-Colombiano. Drum that taught me how to dance, the same drum who made me papa feliz in his país, the same drum that taught me how to dance. Mi salsa es una historia de la diáspora africana. My salsa is a story of the African diaspora. Mi salsa es una historia de la niña de 1989. The same drum that taught me how to dance, the same drum that made my papa feliz in his país. My salsa tells the story of a girl from 1998. Mi salsa es colombiana. My salsa is Colombian. Mi salsa cuenta al mundo entero la historia nuestra, la historia del afro-colombiano Joe Arroyo. My salsa tells the story of our people, the story of Afro-Colombiano Joe Arroyo. Joe Arroyo. A esa reina me la respetan, a esa reina me le dan amor, a esa reina me le dan su lugar como reina, como reina. That black woman you are going to respect. That black woman you are going to love. That black woman you are going to respect like the queen that she is. I would love, I do have two more poems that I want to read, and then I would love to get to know who's here, and if you have any questions, anything that you would love to ask about the poetry, I would love to answer those questions. So let's do, I know, Reina, you ready? Reina, let's do it. I love that one. All right, so this was a participation piece, so you're going to say blessings when it's time, okay? Are we going to practice that? Let's do it. We're going to do blessings. Yep. Blessings. Yep, that's perfect. So I'm going to say, una reina de bendiciones, una reina de bendiciones. Then you're going to say, blessings. Okay, are you ready? Okay, I'm going to do it with you, and then we'll practice it together, because it has a little vibe to it, a little funk vibe to it. Una reina de bendiciones, una reina de bendiciones, blessings. Una reina de bendiciones, una reina de bendiciones, blessings. Una reina de bendiciones, una reina de bendiciones, blessings. Una reina de bendiciones, una reina de bendiciones, blessings. Yeah, you got it. Okay, so Brad usually is on bass, so we're going to have fun with this one, okay? And then I want you to do the bass line with me, and then we'll go into the poem and into the blessings part. So I want you to go. Ba-da-dum bum bum bum. Ba-dum bum bow. Ba-da-dum bum bum bum. Ba-dum bum bow. Ba-da-dum bum bum bum. Ba-dum bum bow. Ba-da-dum bum bum bum. Bum 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 bow. Ba-da-dum bum bum bum. Oh, ah-dum bum bow. one strand at a time. No other star can chant the cries of your ancestors because you are uniquely made. You are uniquely made. Hand stitched, woven one strand at a time, at a time. There is no other star in the sky who shines and vibes like you, because you're a light and you're a vibe and you're a light and you're a vibe and you give vibes and you give light and we are light and we are light and we are shining. Vibe, 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 vibe. Beloved ones, you are here, shining in all your ancestral light. A beacon of light, 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 light. You are here shining. You're a beacon of light. A light, 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 light. I was meant to recite this poem, to beat my drum in gratitude to Mama Dios, to Papa Dios, a los ancestros, ancestors. Uniquely made, hand stitched, woven one strand at a time, strand at a time. Because I bring light, and I bring life. I am a vibe, you are a vibe. And we bring light, and we bring light, and we bring light, and we bring light, 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 light. That's what my mother used to say to me. She said, Jessica, always remember that you are a queen full of many blessings. You are a queen. And I said, yes, Mama. So she says, every single time you see me, you always gotta ask me for la bendición. And I said, yes, Mama, la bendición. And she says, Dios la bendiga. Una reina de bendiciones, una reina de bendiciones. 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 Give yourselves a round of applause. Very good. Beautiful. Please give a round of applause to Brad Williams on percussion tonight. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for sharing time and space with us. I would love to answer any questions that anybody has about any of the poetry, any of the context, any of the language that I used, maybe even how I began my career, how I published, maybe the band. Again, please, I would love for you to follow me on I am Jessica Ayala on Instagram, and stay in contact with me. Oh, thank you. Yes, so the second edition to my book is literally legitimately being published now. If you would like a copy of what you heard tonight, a copy of my book, there is a sign-up sheet, and we'll be glad to mail it to you. It definitely, this is the first edition, so the second edition is going to look different. Can you imagine maybe what it'll look like? We don't know, maybe. But yes, if you're interested, I will have books for sale next month, and we would be glad to send those to you. Yeah, so does anybody have any questions? Don't be shy. Sí, por favor. The poetry and the artistry? Absolutely. So this is how I started in poetry. So when I immigrated to the United States, I did not have an ESL teacher. And so I had to learn on my own how to speak English. It's a crazy story. I had to learn. But one of the things that I realized that was easy for me was writing. That's how I communicated with people. I learned how to write in English before I could speak English. And for me, being a natural, believe it or not, I am an actual introvert. I really, really am an introvert. But I was already a natural introvert, so people are like, yeah, right, no way, there's no way. Trust me, I am. I wrote, and so that's how I started my poetry journey. I wrote 2 poems in 3rd grade, and my teacher submitted those 2 poems in 3rd grade to a children's anthology, and it made it. I wrote 2 poems, one about spring and one about rain, because I'm still the same girl, like la misma niña. I love rain and I love spring. It's the two of my favorite, just natural, things that Mother Earth does. And when I saw my words in print, when I saw this huge anthology, I saw my name. It changed. Everything changed for me. I said, oh my gosh, like I had no idea that this could be a life that was possible. And so I competed. I was able to go to college on a scholarship and competed in poetry interpretation. It's called forensics. In high school, there's forensics. You do debate, but you also do like poetry interpretation, drama interpretation. And so I did them all, but I also did poetry, and that's how I was able to go to college. I traveled across the country doing poetry interpretation. But once I got out of college, I was really passionate about immigration issues and injustice, and so I left that behind to follow my passion at the time. And once I left teaching kindergarten, that's when I got back into my poetry. So, if you write, if you're a natural-born artist, please always remember that that will always come back to you. Your first love will always come back to you. It will never not be a part of who you are. And you get to choose how long you leave it or keep it, or if it intertwines in between everything that you do. So never, ever, ever stop writing. Never stop writing poetry. And it's incredible, I consider myself a spoken word artist. This is what a spoken word artist looks like. I ebb and flow between both languages. I use percussion, I sing, I stop in the middle of my singing, I spit some. It really is a unique way of presenting poetry and literacy in a way that maybe hasn't been seen before or has been seen before. And so, it all kind of intertwines in who I am, my story, what I've done for a living in my careers, how I wrote about those experiences, and how I published a book to share those experiences.
And one last thing, preservation of your cultural identity. Because sometimes, when we hear, especially if you came here young, we tend to lose a little bit of that. So in your poetry, your trips back home and your family, what other things connected you to your cultural identity, and why is it important to preserve your cultural identity?
Well, I think one of the most I have to give, praise to my father. Mi papá fue el que nos inculcó la cultura. My father said, no, aquí se habla español. When we were home, we spoke Spanish. It was very important for my father to make sure that we kept that, the culture. And my mother was also very culture and, just the way we were raised. No, aquí se saluda. Aquí le piden la bendición. So it was very much respecting our elders, respecting my mother, honoring my mother in the ways that she expected for me to honor. So it was very much I had a Colombian life at home when I got off the school bus, but then I went into an American lifestyle, when I went to school. And I'm sure a lot of us can probably share the same journey. The best of both worlds, exactly, right? Like we get the empanadas and the apple pies. Same, it's like it's everything in between. But my father playing music, on the weekends, having parties. The music, obviously, it influenced me. It made me who I am today. And every time I went home, my father was very proud. He was like, "Mija, le quiero enseñar esto, mira esto." Like my father was always like, "I want to take you here. This is where I grew up. This is how I grew up as a child. This is what I used to do." And he would always constantly talk to us about stories and his journey and why they came to the United States. And proud, he always had the Colombian flag hanging in the living room with the American flag. And whenever he would take his solo trips, he would always bring Colombian coffee back home and just things, little salt spices that my mother would use in her rice and different things like that. But I also had to learn. Funny story, my father is hilarious. He does not have any kind of patience, probably like every Latin father that there is. My father loves to cut lines, American lines. Let me be very specific. My father likes to cut American lines, and American people are like, "What in the actual are you doing?" So embarrassing. I'm like, "Dad, you have to wait your turn. You have to get in line. You can't just skip over people." But then when I went to Colombia, I finally got it. There are no lines that exist in Colombia. I'm sure it's probably the same from the Dominican, Puerto Rico, and Mexico, wherever. But there are no lines. You have to get in where you can fit in. Or no te atiendan. They will not serve you. And so in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, so many things about my father and the way that he is makes so much sense in Colombia. Not in the United States, but in Colombia. I remember there were times where my father would be like, whenever I would come home late when I was a teenager, I would never say hello to him. I would think he was asleep, and I wouldn't say goodnight or la bendición to my father. My father would be like, what am I, a dog? Am I a dog? Soy un perro? And in my mind, I'm like, the dogs get treated so well in America. Like, what are you talking about? And then when I went back home, I saw so many hungry, poor dogs in the streets, and I thought, oh, that's what he was talking about. Like, he was talking about the dogs at home and how, like they're abandoned, they don't take care of their, dogs and pets in general. But it's little things like that, like as like Colombian American growing up or as a Colombian growing up in America, all of that happens. But it's also beautiful, like even on the indigenous side of things, my mother, whenever I would get sick, my mother would take medicine from the earth, and it's beautiful the way that she would chop the tobacco up and, just like do like ear things, when I would have ear infections or if I had a cold. She would use her indigenous medicine, and I didn't know that that's what she was doing when she was doing it, but when you get older, you're like, oh my gosh, of course, naturally she would be using indigenous remedies, and my mother doesn't like me to call her una brujita, but she is one. I know I am. But she's very, very, very Catholic, so she does not like to use that word. A lot of people identify brujas, or we call witchy people, right? As a bad thing, as a negative thing. But that's a part of like creating my own narrative and saying I'm a spiritual woman, but I also consider myself a bruja. And that's not necessarily a negative thing in my narrative and in the way that I see myself and how I represent myself. But I take pride in that. And I laugh with my mom, I giggle with her, because she's like, don't ever say that about me, that's not who I am. I'm a Catholic woman, like the saints, like, arrepiéntate, confiésate. So it's just like, Mom, chill, like, trust me, the ancestors love me, and I'm doing the Spirit's work. But that's also part of it. Growing up, like having all the rich parts of my culture and, understanding how it all melts or fits into like this diverse bowl, right, of Latino America. Those are beautiful, beautiful questions. Anybody else? Yes?
Yes, so I really like that you talked about how Colombian and American school.
Yes.
So are there any instances where you have rebelled against American culture?
Oh, yeah.
Like, for me, like I am mixed, I'm Puerto Rican and Vietnamese.
Wow.
I came from like a primarily white middle school.
Wow.
Growing up around like people. So like I always knew that I was different culturally from other people. So what were some things that you noticed about the American way of life that didn't fit with you?
Yes. Well, I think definitely going back home, I realized there was a huge difference between the way that American people celebrate the holidays and celebration than the way Colombian people do. Colombian people will party for freaking 6 months. Like, Colombian people will stay lit for 6 months. And I'm like, y'all are still kicking it? They're like, yeah, we just went to the next city. And like, that's how it is. Like, people know there is a very particular time of the season where everything will shut down, the whole family gets in a little caravan, and everybody kicks it. And it's a beautiful thing because it's literally the whole village and the whole small town that will close all of their businesses down, and it'll be like a huge Whoville type of vibe where everybody's like singing around the Christmas tree type vibes. It really is. Here, it's funny. Like whenever I would have friends that would travel to the United States, they would be like, "Oh my God, it's so quiet during the holidays. There's nothing to do. Nobody's in the streets. Like there's no festivals. There's no parties. There's no music. It's just snow and it's cold and nobody wants. So it's a very different vibe. Everybody's in the streets like, ah! Like just like throwing, confetti, and there's the carnavales de blanco y negro that I spoke about in my poetry. Literally, it's so much fun. Everybody gets this white powder and runs amok in the city and just starts throwing that crap on everybody, like white flour, hair. So everybody, by like 10 o'clock, everybody's like drunk, and everybody has like white powder in their hair and on their face, and they're just like, yeah, just kidding. So that changed for me. I was just like, people are literally this lit every year, and here it's like, okay, we go to midnight mass and
Like you had lost like the life and color of what was like the celebration. But I was also gonna say was, do you consider how big a gambler it is?
one more time? Oh, absolutely. I do all. Please, let's be friends on social media and message me. I would. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for tagging me. I love to always share those. Please do. We can always do a FaceTime or a Google Meet. You know, if you have ideas. I love to work with young writers. It is. Yep, that's how it happens. And sometimes you do need another poet to be like, stop. That's like the third addition to the poem that you wrote, and you just change one word. Like, it gets that way. We do get kind of tunnel visioned, and we do have to like put it to rest. No, trust me. That's why I'm like, a second addition to the book. Should I? Should I not? Should I? But you grow. You grow as a poet, so you're allowed to do those things. But yes, anybody who would love to be, I would love a chance to help you out. Yeah.
Yes, we are from the University of Cincinnati. We would love to invite you in April for our conference if you are free.
I would love to. Just let me know what days, and we could talk later about, you know, what that would look like and how. I mean, anytime I can get an opportunity to share like this, you know, it's an exchange. To me, being able to be here today and share poetry and literature with you is an exchange. I really vibe off of your energy. I can already feel your stories. I can feel where you come from, like why you're so passionate about what you're doing. It is a beautiful thing. It's an exchange. You all fill my cup, just as I hope that Brad and I both filled your cup tonight. It's an exchange of spiritual poetry liquid. Yes?
So, thinking about Latinx identity in general, can you talk to us about decolonization and how can we reconcile? So, some of us are first, second, third, or fourth generation Latinx American. So, how can we use decolonization to begin reconciling who we are?
I love that. That's such a good, oh my goodness, that's a good question. So, I think it's very important for us to, I'm a huge documentary person. Like, I'm a nerd. I like on Saturdays and Fridays sometimes, I like to just put a good documentary in. And the kind of documentaries that I like to watch are like the empire and how the Mayan Empire fell, like how the Aztec Empire fell, how the Incan Empire fell. I love to go to exhibits, you know, like there was recently the Mayan exhibit that was in my city. Sometimes it's a little depressing though, because you get to see all of these artifacts, and then you also get to learn that there were so many scriptures and artifacts that were destroyed, you know, by the colonizers. So we don't really ever get to know like the true significance of chocolate, or like, I don't know, how agriculture was even done in los templos and all this other stuff. But I would say education is everything. There's lots of documentaries, there's lots of even poets out there that are spitting real scripture about who we are as African and as indigenous people in general. I think it's so important. You know, we've literally been stripped from that. We've been taken from those things. You know, there's so much history that we don't know about women, you know, that have been taken from us. There's so much history that's been taken from Native people, from people who existed in other spaces before that space became gentrified. You know, that's the new word everybody's using now. But gentrification is just another word for colonization, or I call them urban pioneers. That's kind of what I call them. But really history is important. There's a reason why history exists, and there's a reason why history is being taken out of our school systems. Because the more that we know, the more that we change narrative, and we begin to rebel, and we begin to start showing up in our natural light. For example, one of the things that in my particular decolonized journey, I have learned to honor why braiding is so important in my Native and indigenous culture. Like braiding, it is an important spiritual routine that every single time you braid, there's 3 intentions that are made with braiding. It's like the mind, the spirit, and the soul. But it's also like, I even pray over the fabric, like this pink fabric that I have, I even pray over that. I sage it. I really give it its best intention before I intertwine it with my hair. And that to me is important. It's not just, because, oh, qué bonito, like it looks good in a photo. It's not, I mean, even though that's fun, right? This is fun to do. But it's more spiritual for me, and just the intention of being able to braid my hair every night when I go to bed, being able to braid my hair, in the morning again. There's so much spirituality in just being able to say that I can do that again, because in history, though that was, our hair was cut, we were not allowed to do those things, and we're now getting back to those places where we can do that. And that's just a really small portion. Even identifying and recognizing that my last name, yeah, okay, it's Ayala, but what does that really mean? I was owned, by Spanish masters, like Los Españoles. And if you think about, there's so many movies out there, like The Amistad, and like, Los Españoles, and like what, how they traded, the African trade. And even before then, you begin to start learning so much that even Africans and South Americans used to trade way before there was even a slave trade. So it's just beautiful to be able to see that there were entire civilizations, beautiful civilizations that used to exist in our life that were literally stripped. Why? Because, land and gold and water was more important than someone's life and someone's culture and someone's cultivation. But what's beautiful about my journey and even y'all's journey in decolonizing is that no matter how they take things away from us, we are still the same people. It's beautiful whenever I go to like a party, los mexicanos, with the cumbia, they're like, dan, 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 dan. And it's like, it's so cool because, Mexicanos, they will, if you notice, they'll like dance in a circle and they'll and Mexicanos, they will do this for like 4 hours. Like, and we're gonna just dance in a circle and just do this little hip thing and hip, but if you notice, the Apache, when they do their powwows, it's the same thing. They're in a circle, but it's because we are raza. We are indigenous people. Like, percussion is important to who we are as a people. But just like indigenous people of this land of the Americas, right? Because America stretches from Canada, the United States, all the way down to Central and South America. That's the Americas. But that's also where all of the native tribes, that have been stripped. It's like, let's take all these native tribes and just call them Latino. Because that's what works for us. It's like, no, homie, like, homeboy over there is Apache, I'm over here, I'm Lakota, it's a deep thing. But it's also the same when you talk about hip hop and when you talk about trap. Like you have that heavy bass and you have those heavy percussion and if you notice in Afrobeat, if you notice in jazz, if you notice in funk, all of that stuff, plays a role. Like you think about like a legacy. People, you talk, I mean, I can go on and on talking about blues and funk and even rock and roll and how rock and roll was invented. But that's what I mean by poets and musicians. They change the world and they keep culture alive. That's what you talk about for the culture, right? Like, there's an artist. I know some of you probably know him, Toby. But he, him and his whole tribe. He has a whole tribe of people with color and aesthetics and like just heavy bass, and it's just beautiful to be who Black people are, and just like Black love, and Black light, and Black vibes. And I just love that. I love when Black people can express themselves, in the most beautiful magic that they are, because there's no. I consider I really do, like, that's why I'm a part of the band that I'm a part of, because I just consider Black people to be literally the most magical people in the world, and they inspire me so much. But you can see that your ancestors literally are with you. Like, you can feel it through the music, through the food. Like we may eat our rice differently, but it's still rice. Whether it's sugar rice or it's salty rice, whether it's butter rice or, the rice is like mixed with chicken. It's the same thing because we come from those roots, And a part of our decolonized story is like bringing all of that to the forefront versus the back. And really occupying spaces on campus. I can't tell you enough, I can't emphasize enough how important it is, for you all to occupy space on campus. Occupy space with your beautiful light, with your beautiful vibes, in classrooms, outside of the classrooms. Did you get another one, or were you just scratching?
I was scratching. Sorry.
No, you're fine. It's okay. But Yeah, I mean, you know, education is everything. It's out there. You know what I mean? Like, really learn about your people and ask your grandparents if they're still alive. You know, find out your genealogy. Find out where you're from. You know, like, and if you don't know, go back home. Travel back home. There is nothing more beautiful than to be able, if you can, you know, to be able to go back to your pueblo or go back to the place that you know, that, I don't know, like your, what is those ancestry.coms? You know, like where you think, what part you were probably born or your ancestors were from. You know, like you begin to start realizing that there's so much of a match with everything, you know, that is a part of who you are. I have a friend of mine who did Ancestry.com and found out that they were like literally like 50% Irish, which we were looking like, no way. Sister went back to Ireland and was like, homie. You know, like here I am in Ireland, like I had no idea, like this stuff makes so much sense to me, and I'm like, yep. Because it's a part of who you are, you just vibe on that. We vibe on, and there's so much percussion in Ireland, and there's so much indigeneity in Ireland. You know, but indigenous people exist across the world. That's what's beautiful about it. Like getting back to like your authentic self and, you know, all of that good. Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you for that question. ¿Algo más? Anybody else? Yes, please.
I was wondering two things. One, about your creative process, because like in your poetry, music and poetry are so intertwined. So did you write listening to music, or like you put together the musical show afterwards, or how does that work?
Well, Brad is he plays a huge instrumental part in that. You know, sometimes I'll give Brad an idea, like, you know what, Brad, this poem I wrote because I was feeling this way, and I just really want it to be a heartbeat. And he just starts playing a beat, and then before long, I can visualize words, or I can look through like my journal and be like, oh my God, this poem is gonna fit perfect here. Like Reina de Bendiciones was just that. He got on the bass, he was playing around on the bass, down, down, and I was like, blessings. Brad, like, this is a shout to all the sisters. Like, it just comes, you know. And I think that it's just a blessing when you're able to like work with other musicians or other poets or other artists, because sometimes their own vibe creates a vibe for you. But I do that even sometimes I really like the way words. Like I had Reina de Bendiciones, Queen of Many Blessings. I had that verse for a long time written in a journal. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I was just like, I love it as a dope verse, but I don't know when I'm ever going to drop it or if I'm going to write a poem about it, but it's important. And it just sat there forever until, of course, you know, Brad gets on the bass and he's like, and I'm like, Reina de Bendiciones. So, yeah, that's kind of the way the process works. Like, I'll give it, if you guys are writers, artists, I mean, honestly, any kind of people who like to just think and create, I would so advise you to get one of these. I carry one of these around all the time, and when I have an idea, I literally write them down on here. Look at this. I just have like this spider web of like, oh, this poem. You know, this is a poem about ice. You know, and like all the ideas I have about ice. But I mean, this is a part of my creative process. You know, sometimes it works out for me. You know, like I'll just write stuff down. Yeah. So yeah.
And the other one was, you speak a lot about the drums, but I would like to know if you think there's like a connection between being a woman and the drum. I think about the Duke Ellington's CD, a drum being a woman is like the first, it's like a hymn. Yes. So I would like to know what you think about that.
Absolutely. I find it sad that a lot of cultural tribes won't allow women to touch drum or won't allow women to beat on a drum. But I understand why, because it's a huge responsibility. Clave, in particularly, it's not a woman's instrument. Clave is really honestly meant, you know, well, it's not meant for men, but a lot of men will want men to do clave. For as small and tiny as this instrument is, if you got the gift to hold a beat with this is all you need. The whole entire salsa band will go according to this beat, but you have to stay on beat. You can't, but it's magic. Because once you're in it, and once you're feeling this, everything around you goes. You know, like the trumpet starts, the congas start, but it's a trance. It's almost like a trance, and drumming is the same way. Percussion is a trance. And you know, in the jazz world or in the other world, they call it, they're in pocket. Like, ooh, that pocket sounds good. You know, they talk about drum kits, like he's in pocket or she's in pocket. But, I received like one of the hugest compliments from one of my mentors who plays percussion the last time I went to Rumba, because I go to Rumba on Sundays, and it's just congas. I do percussion, and he was just like, Ayala, you held clave. And I was like, I did? And I mean, I had been practicing through the whole pandemic. I literally went down to the river and I just danced. And as I was dancing, I was like, just kept it and kept it and kept it, because this is just, like, Joetta Rory was like my hero, so I want to become Joetta. Just please, sons. It's like my dream, but I think that there's a different sabor that women bring to percussion. And I want to push more women to not be afraid of it, to really get in. Brad is a huge proponent of being like, come on over here, Ayala, and go ahead and get on this drum. I'm like, but I can't. Women in drums, and even like the history that they took from us when it came to percussion. There's a lot of unwritten history about women and how they participate majorly in drumming. It's not just a man's sport, if you will, whatever that means. It's not Brad. He's like, I'm not disagreeing. Anything else? Yes.
I know that you had some poems in English and Spanish, so I wanted to ask if you had any clear lines between these two languages, like, or is it fluid? Do you kind of
I love that question.
choose as you are writing which language to use?
So, I wrote this book of poetry, this collection, just like how I speak. You can tell because I do a little bit of English, then I go back into Spanish, and it's naturally the way that I vibe. So I wrote the book. I will say to you that a lot of poets that I respect that are both Spanish and English speakers, they told me, they were like, Jessica, this poetry book will never go anywhere because it's written very sloppy and you're all over the place. And I remember going home that day and crying because I was like, I don't know what I thought I was doing writing a poetry book. But you know what? One of my friends was like, no, that's you. Like, not every book is meant to be written specifically in English or specifically in another language. This is who you are, this is how you identify, this is how you show up in the world. And because of that reason, you've got to write your poetry just the way that you have it written down. Otherwise, it's not you, it's not authentic. And that's a part of showing up in your artistry, whatever that looks like. Can you imagine if Doja wasn't who she was? Doja's who she is because she is who she is. You know what I mean? Beyonce's who she is because she is. Selena was who she was what she was. She brought the whole bustier, vibe to the norteño. She just is who she is, and I could talk a number of different artists out there, but you gotta show up as your authentic self, even in your own writing. So that's kind of how that process worked. I really did think about doing 2 different books of poetry, one in English and one in Spanish, because I was so afraid that it was never going to make the cut. But then I found out that tons of poets in California and in Texas were doing the same, and even New York. I was like, oh my God, no, we're gonna keep it just like it is, Spanglish, and call it a day. But that's a good question. Well, thank you all so much. I appreciate you so much. Please feel free to come up and talk to the world. Muchas gracias. Another round of applause also for Brad for being here. And thank you so much, NKU, for everything that Latino Student Initiatives. Muchísimas gracias. Un abrazo para Lucia también. He's wonderful and all that he's been able to do. He's